Hello and welcome back to the LFS podcast, the second episode. This week on the show, we're going to be talking about an abundance of different things from Erling Haaland and Manchester City, the Champions League, the quarter-final draw, plus the route to the finals of those competitions, plus the FA Cup quarter-finals, and El Clasico was in there as well. Plus, we're going to be talking about the Antonio Conte saga and all the outburst after the result at Southampton the weekend. Plus, we're going to be talking about all of the Premier League results and the change that makes in the table. Just before we get the episode started, I do want to apologise that I am still recovering from COVID. It's just a slight cold at the moment. But yes, I am still recovering from that, and that will be continuing throughout this show, so I do apologise for that. Right then, let's get right on to the podcast then, and let's start with Erling Haaland to Manchester City, and that Erling Haaland scored his second hat-trick in 5 days as Manchester City cruised into the FA Cup semi-finals by hammering Championship leaders Burnley at the Etihad on Saturday. Erling Haaland followed his 5-goal haul against RB Leipzig in the Champions League by claiming another 3 to take his tally for the season to 42 goals. He is just 2 short of the record held by Ruud van Nistelrooy and Mohamed Salah for most goals in a season for an English top-flight club during the Premier League era. Julian Alvarez also scored 2 goals, and substitute Cole Palmer also scored on a sobering night for former City skipper Vincent Kompany, whose Burnley side have surged 13 points clear at the top of the Championship. Now, Manchester City, of course, were incredible on Saturday night. 6 goals against Burnley. Burnley, of course, flying high at the top of the Championship at the moment, almost certain to be making a return to the Premier League. And of course, Vincent Kompany will be returning with that Burnley side. Of course, former Manchester City captain that won 10 major honours with the club at his time in Manchester. It was a fabulous game. I did watch the full game. I watched the highlights of it, and the goals were fabulous. And Erling Haaland, I mean, he's a robot, isn't he? He's just unstoppable. Erling Haaland, you just can't do very much about him, really. And no one can seem to stop him at the moment, and that is truly, truly concerning. That literally no one in world football can stop him at the moment. Not many teams have stopped Manchester City in total this season in terms of stopping them from scoring, but not many teams have also stopped Erling Haaland either when Manchester City are scoring. And they've been excellent too, Manchester City, of course, 7-0 against Leipzig in the week. Of course, 5 of those goals scored by Erling Haaland to progress to the Champions League quarter-finals, and then to get to the semi-finals of the FA Cup by scoring 6 past Burnley, and 3 of those from Erling Haaland. He is absolutely incredible. And the thing, just a few weeks ago, some people were saying, are Manchester City better off without Erling Haaland, or are they playing better without Erling Haaland? Clearly not. They've scored 13 goals in 2 games against 2 very good sides, both defensively, and Erling Haaland has tore them apart, scoring 8 goals in those 2 games. It's absolutely obscene, unheard of, really. And of course, Manchester City, we're going to be talking about the title race later on in the episode, but and how that is different for Manchester City and how they can come back onto top form to try and catch Arsenal. But at the moment, they seem to be returning to that form that we've seen in Manchester City, that no matter what happens, they seem to just get results, and they seem to just keep winning and keep churning out these results that they need to at this business end of the season, because throughout the season we've been saying Manchester City are going to hit top form at one point. They're going to hit that level of just going a crazy winning run. And I think this could be the catalyst for the start of it, really. 7-0 win in the Champions League, a 6-0 win in the FA Cup, and then they've an international break, and they go again in April and May, and we'll see if that form carries through past the international break. Of course, they've got Liverpool at home in the Premier League after the international break, and a few tough results for Manchester City towards the end of the season, and we'll see how they deal with that, and if they can keep that already looks to be positive form running, and we'll see what they can do to really build that and try and chase Arsenal down. But incredible for Manchester City and Erling Haaland this week. They have been absolutely sensational, progressing in 2 cup competitions, and incredible. Speaking of cup competitions, we'll talk about the Champions League now, and of course, a crazy week in the UEFA Champions League. As I said, Manchester City winning at 7-0 on Tuesday night, and then of course the clash of last season's Champions League final, Real Madrid against Liverpool at the Bernabeu. It was kind of a really dull game in the end. It did finish 1-0 to Real Madrid in the end, and it was mainly what Liverpool fans were expecting. That the unexpected was Liverpool would come back in that game and win by 4-0. But, I mean, how slim were the chances? And it was proven. The chances were very slim. Liverpool didn't even create a big chance, more or less, in that whole game. They were quite nullified quite easily by Real Madrid. And Real Madrid just nicked the goal to even win the game, even though they didn't really have to, Real Madrid. In the end, they did, despite not having to. That was on Wednesday night. Real Madrid beat Liverpool 1-0. It ended up 6-2 on aggregate. Real Madrid, of course, they destroyed Liverpool in the first leg, 5-2 at Anfield. The other game on Tuesday night, the Man City game, Porto against Inter, ended 0-0. Inter just scraped through from 1-0 win at home in the first leg, and Napoli completely overturned, completely done in. Frankfurt 3-0 at home. Napoli there on Wednesday night. 5-0 win for them. They could be the real dark horses for the Champions League this year. Also going through in the Champions League were Bayern Munich, who beat PSG, and Tottenham, of course, were put out by AC Milan in the end in that one. Benfica destroyed Club Brugge in the end, 5-1 on the night in the second leg, 7-1 on aggregate, and then Chelsea overturned a 1-goal deficit from the Signal Iduna Park in Dortmund to win 2-0 at home at Stamford Bridge a few weeks ago to progress to the quarterfinals for them as well. In terms of the draw for the quarterfinals and semi-finals, we're going to talk through the whole bracket and things like that. Real Madrid will face Chelsea. They faced each other a few seasons ago as well, and last season I think it was as well. Real Madrid coming out on top on both occasions, I think. Benfica will face Inter, Man City will face Bayern Munich, and AC Milan will face Napoli in an all Serie A derby in that one. The first legs of which Man City will be at home, AC Milan will be at home, Real Madrid will be at home, and Benfica will be at home for those games. And will be some exciting ties, especially the Man City Bayern Munich tie will be one to keep a close eye on, as we could see a winner emerging from that one, the ultimate winner of the Champions League. And also AC Milan against Napoli, that will be an interesting one. Napoli, not that they haven't been tested, but this will be their first big test for them in the Champions League away in the first leg. What will they be able to do? Well, based on recent results both domestically and in Europe as well, Napoli really aren't being caused issues by anybody in world football at the moment, and that's probably why they're my dark horses to win the Champions League. In terms of the semi-finals, then the winner of quarterfinal 4, which is Milan against Napoli, and winner of quarterfinal 2, Benfica against Inter, will face off in semi-final 1. So that will mean there's 3 Italian teams have a chance at getting to a semi-final, getting to a final. With that edge of the semi-finals, which will be fantastic. Benfica only standing in the way of those 3 Italian teams for that one. And then winner of quarterfinal 1, which is Real Madrid Chelsea, and winner of quarterfinal 3, Man City against Bayern. As well, we could see 2 English teams as well making a semi-final with that a possibility as well. That would be hugely exciting. But the Champions League is fascinating at the moment. Ultimately, there's a lot, but I would like to see a Napoli-Manchester City final or a Napoli-Bayern Munich final. Ultimately, because I think it would just be a class game of football, really. 2 huge teams that have such an attacking foray, such great attacking football, and that's what you want to see in a final. You don't want a 0-0 draw, you don't want a dull game. So I would like to see Man City Napoli or Bayern Munich Napoli, but definitely Napoli in a final, because that would be absolutely fascinating. Of course, Napoli have never got this far in the Champions League, of course, and they've never got to a quarter-final stage before, so they're already beating their record position in a Champions League. Why not make it and go right all the way to the final? Why not? They can do it. It is possible. And we could be seeing a real exciting end to this season's Champions League as well. Go from cup to cup at the moment, so moving on from the Champions League, moving on to the FA Cup now, and of course some big results in the FA Cup at the weekend. 4 games. I already spoke about Manchester City against Burnley. That ended 6-0. High scoring games in the FA Cup quarterfinals this weekend. 3 games were on Sunday. Sheffield United got a late winner against Blackburn Rovers at Bramall Lane to book their place in a Wembley semi-final. Manchester City loanee Tommy Doyle got a goal right from the top drawer, top right corner, a 91st minute winner in that one to put Sheffield United through in that all-championship tie that was. Brighton looked to be, well, stifled as much as possible in the first half. They were only 1-0 up against Grimsby Town at half-time at the Amex. Dennis Undav opened the scoring in the 6th minute, but it took them to the 51st minute, Brighton, to find their second, and it seemed like the floodgates had opened from then on in, with them ending up winning 5-0 against League 2 Grimsby Town, who were the lowest ranked side left in the competition. A massive feat for a League 2 side getting to an FA Cup quarter-final. Absolutely fabulous. And congratulations to Grimsby getting that far, but of course commiserations going out. They would have loved a Wembley trip out. It would have been an absolute dream for a club from League 2. I don't think any League 2 side have ever got to an FA Cup semi-final. And then Manchester United against Fulham. What a game this was. I have to talk about this because this is absolutely crazy. Manchester United were 1-0 down against Fulham. Alexander Mitrovic scoring at the start of the second half. And then it all kicked off. I think it was Jadon Sancho who was through, almost scoring the goal. Willian deflected it wide, using his hand to deflect the ball wide for a corner on the goal line. So it's a deliberate handball. And of course, it didn't have a goal scoring opportunity. Willian was the referee went to the screen. Marco Silva then came over to the screen, which you're not allowed to do, and shouted at the referee something. The referee straight away gave out a red card to Marco Silva. Then, once that decision was made that there was a penalty to Manchester United and all that, he went over to Willian, gave him a red card, and gave the penalty. Then Alexander Mitrovic, who scored the opener for Fulham, went totally berserk at the referee, kicked off at the referee, and shoved the referee, Chris Kavanagh. He was instantly sent off. Of course, you can't touch a referee, and he certainly seemed like he was going to do more than just touch the referee. He seemed like he was going to punch him. But he was sent off as well, and it all kicked off. And then Fulham down to 9 men, no manager. Bruno Fernandes converted the penalty, and then 2 further goals from Marcel Sabitzer, and then Bruno Fernandes in the 96th minute pushed Manchester United through to the semis, of which the semis will include Manchester United will face Brighton at Wembley, and Manchester City will face Sheffield United. So we could be set up for a Manchester Derby FA Cup final, which has never happened before. It would be a dream. It would be fantastic to see that, wouldn't it? A Manchester Derby in the FA Cup final. And those ties will be played on the weekend of the 22nd and the 23rd of April. Right, 2 other games are around then as we come to not a close yet, but coming close to a close, is Barcelona against Real Madrid in El Clasico on the Saturday and the Sunday night game, as Frank Kessié scored a dramatic late winner as Barcelona beat Real Madrid to move 12 points clear in La Liga. Real went ahead in El Clasico against the run of play as Vinicius Junior's cross was headed into his own net by Barcelona defender Ronald Araujo. Barca equalised just before half-time through Sergio Roberto's shot after Rafinha's effort had been blocked. Marco Asensio saw a late strike for Real ruled out for offside before Kessié scored the injury time winner. Both sides have 12 league games remaining, and Barca are in a dominant position as they look to win the league title for the first time since 2018-19 season. So Barca sit 68 points. That's 12 points clear Real Madrid on 56. Both teams have played 26 games, so that's 12 games left, 36 points left to play for, and they've 10 better goal difference Barcelona. They've only conceded, believe this, they've conceded single-digit goals this season. I think it's 9 goals they've conceded all season. Incredible. And the Real Madrid goal was only their second goal they've conceded at the Camp Nou, since this season in La Liga. It's absolutely wonderful what Xavi is doing with that team, and that's a wonderful story of that game. A really great game. I really enjoyed watching that one. Barca against Real Madrid. It was a true El Clasico. A true Clasico indeed. Right, let's come to a close with our big stories of the week with Antonio Conte, of course. And this has been the big drama in the news the last couple of days. It's just been updated in the last few hours. Furious Tottenham boss Antonio Conte has hit out at his selfish players for not wanting to play under pressure in an extraordinary post-match rant after they threw away a 2-goal lead at bottom side Southampton. Spurs led 3-1 at Saints with 16 minutes to go and looked on course to move third. They conceded 2 goals late on as James Ward-Prowse's stoppage time penalty rescued a 3-3 draw for the home side. Conte told Sky Sports after the 3-3 draw, "I'm not used to seeing this type of situation. I see a lot of selfish players and I don't see a team," he added in the post-match press conference, which lasted 10 minutes. "We are 11 players that go onto the pitch. I see selfish players, I see players that don't want to help each other and don't put their heart in." Tottenham's collapse at St Mary's caps off a miserable March for the club, who were dumped out of both the FA Cup and the Champions League earlier this month, to leave them trophyless since 2008. That's unnecessary to read that in an article. But that's crazy. Antonio Conte hitting out at his players, calling them selfish, saying they're not a team. Well, it's been coming, really, because he's right. Let's be honest, he is correct. Spurs don't play as a team. They play as a group of individuals. They don't find a rhythm. They don't have that mentality to win. And he also said that if they wanna win, they need to have the mentality to win. And at the minute, Spurs don't have that mentality. The players at the club don't have that mentality, and they haven't had that mentality for a good few years. You look at Spurs. The season that Leicester won the league, Spurs could have won the league, but they didn't have that mentality that season to win the league. They let it run. And it's really the big question, what is the approach at Spurs? What will be the future plan at Spurs? What does Daniel Levy want for that football club? Does he just want top 4 positions? Does he want just a wee FA Cup run, not really get to the final, the semi-finals, just a wee run, get a bit of money, sign a few players that probably will end up arguing with the manager and end up leaving the club, huffing and puffing? What is the mentality at Spurs? I don't know what it is. And, fans will make a joke and say, they're being Spursy again. It's true. They were 3-1 up at the team bottom of the table, and they threw it away. They threw it away. Of course, many who were watching the games at 3 o'clock on Saturday, I was watching them, I was involved here on LFS, we saw that 3-1 up, Spurs, seemingly it's done. They were 2-0 up. I think Spurs were 2-0 up. Was it? Something like that. They were winning anyway, and they were 3-1 up at the end. They, as I said, there are 16 minutes to go, 3-1 up, and they just threw it away. Like, we all thought, oh, that's game over. Southampton are not going to be able to score 2 goals in 15 minutes. They can hardly score 2 goals in 3 games or something like that. So, they're not going to score 2 goals in 15 minutes. But then we forgot, it's Spurs. This is what Spurs do. They get you they end up in a massively beneficial situation for themselves, and then they just throw it away. Really, it happens too often. But Antonio Conte and all the saga, I don't think he's right to come out and say it in public. If it was my manager, or the manager of my football club, that come out and said things like that, I would be hugely disappointed and hugely angry with him for coming out in public and saying it. Because I don't think things like that are for the public and are for the media to be involved in. And Jose Mourinho done it a few years ago with one of his players. I think it was at Manchester United, and he threw them under the bus in a press conference and says he's selfish and doesn't want to do his job and all this. And I think that's wrong. Publicly indicting players is kind of wrong, in my opinion. Have a chat with them behind the scenes, and if you've got a problem with them, take it up with them behind the scenes. Don't come out into the public in a press conference and say it, and possibly get yourself sacked or in a bad position from that, But that's what he did. No shortage of drama at Spurs. There's always something going on. Right, and to wrap us up then, 7 Premier League games, including that Southampton Spurs game, which you heard ended 3-3 in the end over the weekend. Some big games, the title race, the relegation battle as well in there, and the battle for top 4 was all in question. Newcastle won 2-1 away at Nottingham Forest on Friday night on St. Patrick's Day. The 2 goals from Alexander Isak. Brain freeze there. Newcastle won 2-1 away at Nottingham Forest. Alexander Isak scored both goals in stoppage time of both halves with a last 93rd minute penalty to seal all 3 points for Newcastle. Emmanuel Dennis opened the scoring, but in the end it was Newcastle who headed back to the northeast with all 3 points. In the Saturday games, Chelsea drew 2-2 with Everton at Stamford Bridge. And they were 2-1 up, Chelsea, in that game. Goals from João Felix and Kai Havertz's penalty after had them 2-1 up. Abdoulaye Doucouré scored in between those 2 goals to make it 1-1 at one point before Kai Havertz brought it back to 2-1. And Ellis Sims, just in the 89th minute, scored the second leveller for Everton in that game for the side battling relegation to rescue a point on Graham Potter's side. Ultimately, their march that was seemingly going to be a perfect march ended up with just a slight bit of tarring in the end. A great game at 3 o'clock on Saturday, Wolves against Leeds. Leeds got a 4-2 win away at Wolves. Goals from Jack Harrison, Luke Ayling, Rasmus Christensen, and a 97th minute goal from Rodrigo sealed the points for Leeds. Goals for Wolves came from Johnny and Mateus Cunha, but it was too little too late, as Wolves had 2 players sent off in the end, Johnny in the 84th minute and Mateus Nunes in the 100th minute to seal the deal. 4-2 victory for Leeds, and must-win game that was for Javi Gracia's side, and Wolves beaten at home once again. Southampton against Spurs ended 3-3. We talked about all that drama. Moving on, another draw in the 3 o'clock kickoffs. Brentford against Leicester. Pretty dull game in the end. Brentford took the lead. Matthias Jensen won the 32nd minute. It was an equaliser from Harvey Barnes in the 52nd minute that brought it to 1-1. And Shandon Baptiste got a second yellow card in the 92nd minute of the game. And Brentford were down to 10. But it wasn't enough. Didn't have enough of an impact for Leicester to get any more than a point from that game. Aston Villa against Bournemouth then. Villa won 3-0 at home to Bournemouth. Bournemouth, of course, fresh off a win over Liverpool the week previous. And Aston Villa looking to get back to a good home form this season. 3 goals from Douglas Luiz, Jacob Ramsey and Emmanuel Buendia. That sealed the points for Villa. They were 1-0 up just until the 80th minute. The last 2 goals coming in the last 10 minutes of the game. But it was too much for Bournemouth that day for Villa, as they got all 3 points and seemingly really pushing away from that bottom 9 in the table. And then the last game of the weekend, Arsenal against Crystal Palace. Another scintillating display from Arsenal at the Emirates, who beat Crystal Palace by 4-1. Gabriel Martinelli and Granit Xhaka were on the score sheet alongside a brace for Bukayo Saka. Jeffrey Schlupp got a consolation goal to make it 3-1 before Bukayo Saka finished the scoring in the 74th minute to seal the deal for Arsenal at 4-1. An incredible result. And we can tell you what that does to the table. Well, Arsenal extend their lead on Manchester City at the top to 8 points after that win against Crystal Palace. City, of course, have a game in hand over Arsenal as they didn't play due to the FA Cup quarter-finals. But Arsenal now have won all of their last 5 Premier League games, and City have dropped points just once in the last 5, with that draw away at Nottingham Forest, their only blemish on their form. Also in the top 4 race, Manchester United stay in 3rd after that Spurs capitulation at Southampton. Spurs stay in 4th after that capitulation at Southampton. I can't hammer this home enough, can I? Manchester United on 50 points in 3rd with 26 games played. Spurs in 4th on 49 points, but have played 2 games more than Manchester United. Chasing Newcastle are just 2 points behind Spurs, but they have also 2 games in hand in 5th. Liverpool have played 2 games less than Spurs, and they are within touching distance of them with 42 points. If they win their 2 games in hand, Liverpool, plus they play them at home, they will be above them in the table. And Brighton are also chasing the pack as well. They're in a good position. They've played 3 games less than Spurs. Jesus Lord. They're on 42 points as well as Brentford in 8th. In the bottom 3 then, Southampton stay bottom despite that draw at home to Spurs. They're on 23 points. Played 28 games. Bournemouth have played a game less on 24. And West Ham have played 2 games less than Southampton on 24 points as well. That's the bottom 3. Just outside the bottom 3 are Leicester on 25 points, winless in all their last 5, only picking up a point against Brentford. 4 defeats and a draw in their last 5 for Leicester. Terrible form for Brendan Rodgers' side. Nottingham Forest, they're not in great form. 3 defeats and 2 draws in their last 5. They're on 26 points in 16th. Everton on 26 points in 15th. 26 points for Leeds as well in 14th. And 13th and 12th lead up to Wolves and Crystal Palace, who are all in the relegation zone on 27 points as well. It's a real tight battle for the bottom of the table as well. And that is how the Premier League table stands. And that is how the LFS podcast ends for this week. It's a bit of a longer one this week, usually 15 to 20 minutes. We're hitting 27 minutes now. But thank you very much for listening. And we'll be back next week for another great episode. Join us again next week. We'll be wrapping up all the international action and a few other big stories as well. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back